Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hugh Brady and I'm President of Imperial College London. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to Imperial for this celebration of UK-French collaboration in AI and technology. It's a tremendous honour to welcome His Excellency, the President of the French Republic, to our campus. I'm also delighted to welcome Minister Chapaz from the French Government, Ministers Kyle and Clark from the UK Government, and two global pioneers in AI research and entrepreneurship, Demis Hassabis and Arthur Mensch. President Macron, we are located in what is known as Albertopolis, which is named for Prince Albert, who in the 1850s used the proceeds of the Great Exhibition in Hyde Park to create what is now, or what was then, arguably one of the world's first innovation districts. The precinct is also affectionately known by many as the French Quarter of London because of the large French community and educational and cultural institutions near us. I should add that Imperial's new White City Deep Tech campus, which is just a few miles from here, sits on the site of the UK-France Exhibition of Science, Arts and Industry in 1908, or held in 1908, which was the first collaborative international exhibition hosted by our two nations and which attracted over 8 million visitors. Mr. President, Imperial is somewhat unique among the world's top-ranked universities by virtue of our focus on science, technology, engineering, medicine and business, so-called STEM-B. Our founding mission, and I quote, was to be useful, which I think was a wonderful understatement of everything that Imperial has and continues to achieve through its education, its research, its innovation and its entrepreneurial activities. Every day our students, our staff and our partners come together to interrogate the forces that shape our world, and we use that knowledge to tackle the biggest challenges facing humanity. Mr. President, we warmly welcome your leadership, along with that of Prime Minister Starmer, in championing science and technology collaboration through this UK-France summit. At Imperial, we're very proud of our long history of collaboration with France, and we're acutely aware that it's only by combining our research capabilities and by closer collaboration with other European and international partners that we come close to the scale and impact of the very big research ecosystems of USA and China. We are especially proud of our deep bilateral partnership with CNRS, and here I should acknowledge the invaluable support of the CNRS Chair and CEO, and indeed my good friend Antoine Petit, who joins us here today. We're delighted that today's event also marks the launch of the Imperial CNRS Ayrton Blériot Engineering Lab, shortened to ABLE. The lab is named for the British physicist Hertha Ayrton, the first woman elected to the Institution of Electrical Engineers, and French aviator Louis Blériot, who made the first successful flight, of course, across the English Channel in 1909. And fittingly, this international research lab is designed to harness the power of AI, of emerging technologies and of engineering to tackle the grand challenges of sustainability and resilience. As you, Mr. President, and Prime Minister Starmer have highlighted, AI has the potential to transform our economies and our societies for the better. So we're especially pleased, as an institution that hosts over 500 AI researchers, and indeed recently launched a new school of convergent science focused on human and artificial intelligence. We're particularly pleased to be hosting this AI and tech discussion today. I'm looking forward to what I know will be a hugely insightful discussion. And it's first my pleasure to hand over to another very strong advocate for the potential of AI, Dr. Peter Kyle, Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology. Peter.
I'm very grateful for the introduction. It's the first time I've ever been introduced using my doctor title, so I'm going to come back here more often. President Macron, Nobel laureates, distinguished guests, and very many friends, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you, President Macron, to here Imperial today. Mr. President, we met briefly at the successful AI summit in Paris earlier this year. Your speech to Parliament yesterday was both inspirational but also instructive on the need to invest in key technologies of the future, including AI, space and quantum. The UK and France are Europe's two leading tech and AI nations. Our collaborations and cooperation, our indeed friendship, strengthens our mutual endeavour. Britain's tech sector is worth $1.2 trillion, home to 170 unicorns in a world of fierce competition, increasing conflict and uncertainty. It is essential that Britain and France collaborate and cooperate to the mutual benefit of our people, our industry, and indeed the continent itself. As like-minded allies, we must work together in the race for development of critical technologies. Otherwise, we will lose out to our adversaries. We know that working with France and other European partners on tech strengthens our own domestic tech sectors. That's why we're launching a supercomputer partnership between the Bristol Centre for Supercomputing, the home of Isambard AI, and the leading French AI factory, Gency. That partnership supports the AI Opportunities Action Plan, turbocharging breakthroughs in AI, transforming public services, and improving lives. It's why we are developing the AI Research Partnership between Oxford, Cambridge, and the Southleigh Cluster to focus on advancing AI research, education, and innovation, strengthening our common research capabilities and contributing to the wider AI landscape. It's why the UK joined the Euro High Performance Computing Partnership just last year as part of our integration into Horizon Europe, expanding European collaboration on compute. This will enable the UK and French researchers to build larger, more complex AI models, shortening development cycles, accelerating innovation, and creating high-skilled jobs across both countries. And it's why we value deepening collaboration between our respective AI security institutes. And we are building on our close relationships in civil defence institutions, including NATO. We are forging new partnerships for delivering spaceports. We're collecting data to observe the effects on climate change. And we are building resilient and innovative positioning, navigation, timing systems to contribute towards European collective security. The United Kingdom government recently allocated £86 billion for research and development to fund innovations from new drug treatments to AI breakthroughs to grow the UK economy. And I am pleased to see that our confidence in Britain's potential is shared by French investors and the UK's AI sector. The aerospace and defence giant Thales is announcing £40 million of AI-focused R&D investment. Innovate startups like Command AI are investing £35 million in the UK, helping secure the defence capabilities, and Mistral are doubling their office space and their work programme in London. At the same time, British tech companies are winning tens of millions of pounds in significant contracts with France. Corporates, safeguarding jobs and driving economic growth here at home, including Synthesia's new partnership with Decathlon to create new AI avatar labs. 11 Labs collaboration with TV stations like M6 and TV5 Monde, and Dark Trace's contract with GL Events, a French major events operator. Thank you again, Mr. Macron, Mr. President, for honouring us today with your presence. It is my deepest and most sincere wish that our two nations continue working together to deepen our science and our technology partnership and to unlock ever greater opportunities for both of our nations. Thank you.
So welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to Imperial for today's event. It's my great pleasure to host the next discussion between some of our greatest deep tech founders from the UK and France, and also with His Excellency Emmanuel Macron, President of the French Republic. But I'll start by inviting Arthur Mensch, CEO and founder of Mistral AI, to join me. And then I'd like to invite Sir Demis Hassabis, co-founder and CEO of Google DeepMind and Nobel laureate. And of course, it's my great honor now to invite His Excellency Emmanuel Macron to join us on stage. Thank you. So my first question for you, President Macron. From Louis Pisan's influential work on the development of TCP and the IP protocol to Alan Turing's foundations of computing, France and UK have always been global leaders in technological progress. How do you see the strengths of France being built upon to continue that progress, to continue to compete globally as the technological race really builds across the world?
Thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for your words and your very clear program and commitment. And thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us and welcoming us in your university. And I think the title you decided to adopt, I mean, from science to growth, is a very good one, and is probably the best answer to your question. When we look at the challenge, it's clear that I think it's not just because I'm here, but UK and France are probably the two nations to be part of the race and leading the race in Europe. But we are lagging behind, both the US and China. Let's be lucid. And the big question for all of us is how to be part of the competition and indeed to de-risk our model and not to be dependent on US or Chinese solutions. And the first one is science, science, science. And investing in science and fundamental science is absolutely a necessity. And I want just to emphasize this point because it's a very important one, and I'm very pleased by your mention of CNRS. And I know that a lot of research centers in France will sign partnerships during this trip, but fundamental science remains very important, and obviously technological research as well, and so on. The second point is training people. I think our two countries have the chance and the merit to train a lot of data scientists, mathematicians, and so on. So we have the skills, and we were used to train these skills. And we have to follow up and increase. And part of the AI program we have, and since 2018, the first AI plan, very clearly we launched additional training programs in order to have more and more talents, because it's clear that it is one of the critical issues. The third point is to be sure that we have the right ecosystem. And this is here the perfect illustration of what we need. Having public and private labs, but having large companies working with these labs, with startups, and an innovative ecosystem. And I think our two countries are probably the best-in-class ecosystem in Europe. But we are still lagging behind the US as well, if we are totally honest, by the necessity we have to increase the number of startups, but to have much more scale-up opportunities, because the level of our tickets remain clearly behind what is on the US side. And this is why I think we need this big AI program on both sides of the channel. But this is why we need a proper European approach. And capital market union for the European Union, but all the links and capital markets is beyond borders. But having a real financing ecosystem to be able to finance much more our innovation, and especially those who are very demanding in terms of capital, is absolutely critical. And as long as we will be too much dependent on investors in the US or big public and private investment in China, it will be very difficult to consolidate a proper European ecosystem and a franco-British ecosystem. So a better integration and the scale-up of our financing solutions is absolutely critical. The fourth point is about the infrastructure. You mentioned the AI summit. We all announced, completely crazy figures when you are normal people. I mean, when you have just for one project, one plant, something like a dozen of billion euro being invested. But what we need is clearly computing capacities. And as Europeans, we're still dependent on the computing capacities. And for these guys to train their model, I mean, it was very difficult to be just to rely on our own computing capacity, because where we represent 20% of the requests, we had 3 to 5% of the capacities. We are bridging this gap, and we announced, both in UK and France, a lot of additional capacities precisely to train our model and to compute and so on, but this is absolutely critical. It will be impossible to completely kill our dependencies on this track. Why? Because when we speak about this infrastructure, you need to have the packaging of the chips in order to build the AI factories. So we are building AI factories, we are investing, we are attracting investors, but the packaging is for more than 80% of the market made by NVIDIA. So this is why we are attracting NVIDIA, and we signed a great partnership between Mistral AI and NVIDIA. So we go upstream. And after that, when you look at the chips, you need Foxconn or TSMC, but very few Taiwanese companies. So we have to work with these companies to de-risk our model, otherwise we will remain totally dependent on them. So it's clearly one of the critical areas where we have to team up with your country, but as well where we have to accelerate our own research. Because all these guys learned their technology and the chips industry in Europe, by the way. And I would say the last point is to be sure that we precisely go downstream as well. And we share this innovation, and this innovation is, precisely improve the efficiency, the productivity, and transform the different verticals from energy to life sciences and so on. And this is where our capacity precisely to accelerate the ownership of all this innovation, but as well as you mentioned, the way to accelerate our ability to use AI and AI disruptions in other sectors is absolutely critical. I could detail, but I was already too long, but this is why I'm very happy to be here, because DeepMind is clearly a great example of how to make such an innovation a game changer, and what you are doing in life sciences, for instance, is, on my last point, one of the game changers to be much more independent, and where the AI race could be clearly won. And Mistral AI is on the LLM side, clearly with such a frugal and non-Chinese, neither US model, clearly an opportunity to diversify the offer, and for a lot of people, and for me, part of the European champion we want to promote. And this is why, on these different tracks, the partnership between UK and France is, for me, critical, because we exactly face the same challenges. And teaming up together is the best way to have a critical mass when we speak about our talents, our labs, our key players, or our financing capacities.
Thank you very much. Well, I think you've touched on the competition in the space, in the AI space, and I think one of the key reasons for that as well is just the pace of innovation when it comes to AI. So perhaps, Demis, we could come to you and just kind of get your views on how you respond to that pace, and touching on some of the points just raised, what we need to be doing to not only keep up, but to get ahead.
Well, it's a very exciting time right now in AI, of course. The pace of progress has been incredible. But it's also a very serious moment. I think we're a very decisive moment. I've been working on AI for 20 plus years now. DeepMind was started more than 15 years ago. Almost nobody was working on AI then. Now the whole world is working on it. And we've always believed that it's going to be the most transformative technology perhaps humanity will ever invent. So how we build it, the decisions we make, the leaders in this field and the governments in this field make now is going to be decisive about how this goes. And I'm very excited about applying AI to science and using it to accelerate scientific discovery in medicine. That's why I spent my whole career working on AI. And we're making great progress on that front. But it's a dual-use technology, and there are risks too. And I think, you know, I'd love to see more dialogue at the international level about agreeing things like minimum standards for how we want these AI systems to work. And I've been saying for a long time, and we've been talking with President Macron for a long time, you know, maybe even 10 years ago now, about if you want to influence how this debate goes on the global scale, you have to also be in the lead technically, to have a seat at the table. And I think the UK and France and a few other like-minded countries, perhaps like Canada and Switzerland, you know, I think if we band together with the same values, we can form a counterweight to the two global superpowers and influence the debate at the global stage. And I think that's very important to have that voice, given that this technology is going to affect everyone in the world.
Thank you very much. Arthur, if I could come to you on a similar point again, addressing this idea that the pace of innovation is something that is both a challenge and an opportunity, and how you at Mistral AI think about that and respond to that.
Well, one of the premises of starting Mistral AI has been to commit to open science and bring open source models to the world. And it's interesting to note that we actually started the company as a French and British company, as we incorporated the two companies almost at the same time. We had a workforce here very quickly. And to Demi's points, we need, as countries, to have a seat at the table to innovate. If you don't innovate, you're down to regulating, and then it's a little less interesting, and you have less of a say in how we use the technology. And so our approach there is to leverage the power of the two countries when it comes to training people and to have great scientists. And by committing to the open technology and building a business on top, building an enterprise business on top, we've been able to, I think, accelerate and change a bit the way the field were thinking about this issue of having enough transparency around the models, having enough access, ability to change them. And what we see is that with the models that we've released, starting in 2023, the academic world has been able to use them quite extensively. Actually, we've never had as much citations as with Mistral 7B, which is the first model we released. And the reason for that is that it's sufficiently small for scientists working in university to work on them and to do studies. And so we found that by committing to open source and by doing it more than what the US can do, the US is always a bit struggling whether they should do it or not because they have this competition with China, which we have a little less. By committing to this open technology, we've been able to spread science and to have a lot of new scientists work on that technology, and sometimes they came to us and started to work with us.
Thank you very much. I think the open source debate is going to continue and be an important policy area that we're going to need to balance. I think we've talked about the need for science and really allowing science to innovate and talking about how AI itself can help with that. I think the next question is, how do we get some of these great breakthroughs to market? So how do we have science for growth? Mr. President, perhaps you could say something about how France is approaching some of these challenges about translating these great breakthroughs from science, from the lab, and getting them to market.
I mean, it's been our key challenges for decades, I would say. And historically, we were not the best in class, to be totally transparent with you. And during many years, we had this feature to be quite good in some key fundamental science, or quite good in our in Polytechnique, in RIA, CNRS, and challenged by some others in terms of tech transfer. I think during the past 2 to 3 decades, we did improve our ecosystem by creating the flexibilities and the facilities in order to improve the tech transfer, to fix the IP regulations, and to create flexibilities for researchers and so on. And for me, it's, as always, a question of ecosystem and role model. And the question is, as long as in your labs, in your universities, you are just surrounded by people being 100% in academics, you don't have incentives or role model which will create incentives precisely to bring your innovation to the market. Now the situation is totally different. So we passed laws, changed our regulations, I would say at the beginning of the century. But during the past decade, there is a big transformation. And thanks to the French tech, I have some of the French tech people here, but we launched this brand 10 years ago now. And we have this ecosystem not just in France, but everywhere in the world. And it's very inspiring, I would say. And some of the French tech people are not coming from universities. Some are not coming from a big disruption. but some are coming from fundamental research. But it creates an ecosystem and some role models, and it creates a lot of incentives for people, for young people, students, PhD, postdocs, precisely to try to see how they can bring their research into the market in order to get precisely scale and pace. And I think it's, for me, as policymakers, what we have to do is to create the maximum level of flexibilities. So we have to allow those who want to stay and be involved in fundamental research to stay and to be competitive. And this is where we are working very hard, because we are improving the model and we will pass additional stuff in order to be more competitive, in order to keep our talents on fundamental research and universities as well. But we have to create flexibilities to allow them who want precisely to exit in a certain way, or launch a startup, or launch a contract with the private sector, to transform what is fundamental research in an innovation, a company, and I hope tomorrow a large company. So we did improve the ecosystem. We are still improving it. My second point is clearly about financing. I already mentioned it, but I think this is a game changer. And this is why what was done during the past few years with QTI and some others, because we had private financiers launching precisely some additional scale. We had this TB fund, and we tried to accelerate the funding in innovation is as well critical.
I was going to come to you next, Demis, to sort of say, what, as a world-leading deep tech founder, what do you think are still the big challenges, the big hurdles that we need to get out of the way to allow innovation to really flourish?
Well, look, I think the good news is we have, you know, the UK and France specifically, but also in the EU, is we have world-class talent and world-class universities like Imperial, like where we're here. So the talent's always been here, and I've always been a big believer in that. Part of the issue is the ecosystem, as the Mr. President says, and that's getting better. So access to capital, like 15 years ago, was very difficult to start up any deep tech company here. But we've had some proven successes now, and DeepMind's been part of that, and I think that part's got better. What we need is really grand ambitions. People are really ambitious, like Arthur, to go for it, and we've shown that it's possible. And I think there's sort of, this was a lack of role models maybe 20 years ago. Now we have some, and increasingly the next generation as well. And we're very proud of Arthur's success as ex-DeepMind person and a prodigy of ours. And, you know, I think that it just takes a few success stories to start building an ecosystem. That's how Silicon Valley started. And then you reinvest, those entrepreneurs mentor others and reinvest, and you get a critical mass. And I think now Paris and London especially have that critical mass. And we've got to build on it, and with government support, I think we can really make amazing progress in the next 10 years.
Thank you. And Arthur, coming to you with the same question, what would you like to see changed, or what do you think has really worked in the past to allow innovation to flourish in this space?
Well, I think, well, first of all, as Demis said, it's about the ecosystem, and it's about waiting, because you need several generations to stack up and to start becoming bigger and bigger. And if you look at the US kind of started 40 years before us, so we're catching up faster than that, but you still need to have multiple generations of entrepreneurs that follow the cycles of innovations. I think in the field that we're talking about, which is AI today, a very big specificity that this is both a deep tech field where we still need to heavily invest to solve problems that are fundamental and very hard to solve. But it's also like a very good business at that point, because the current technology is already extremely useful to drive productivity and to drive growth within enterprises. And so that's both an opportunity and a challenge for us, because on one side we need to continue to invest on deep tech and to remain competitive and to invent new technology. And on the other side, we need to take the current technology and turn it into a product and solutions that are delivering value to enterprises. And so we need to think about it from first principles, but the good thing is that it also allows to have new sources of financing, because there's growth involved. What that means is that there's a meaningful business model, and it justifies doing these deep tech investments in AI, which maybe 15 years ago were a little harder to justify. And so in a way, the field of AI has moved to something that is quite comparable to biotech, where you invest a lot and you also have a business model down the line. So that's a great opportunity. That also creates a lot of competition, because obviously you have multiple companies that are doing both a business and technology. And so that's why we're seeing that acceleration in progress today.
Thank you very much. And look, I think what's very clear to me is there's a lot of common challenges and opportunities across both France and the UK, and a lot of the suggestions that are coming from the panel are the sorts of interventions the UK government has been making to address some of these challenges. I'd like to sort of move a bit to recognising that AI is really a cross-border technology. It's a global technology, and Mr. President, I'd be interested in your views as to how Europe approaches building a sort of innovation ecosystem and unlocks the potential of AI, referring back a little bit to your comments earlier about the other countries who we're competing against in this space.
No, I totally agree with you. This is clearly a cross-border innovation, and it's not just, I mean, AI cannot be seen as an economic sector. This is a big transformation which will impact all the potential sectors by itself, and is a change in depth of the economic structure, and by the nexus with different sectors like life sciences, energy, and so on, clearly will guide us to breakthrough innovations. So there is no other way than looking at AI as a global trend. The problem when you look, and it has what we have to preserve, because it's very important to preserve the global approach, because this is the most efficient way to deal with our key issues. And if we want to fix our energy challenges, our life science challenges, we have to bring all the potential brains and innovations all together at a global scale. The difficulty is we are facing some exclusivity of in some key pillars or key blocks of the value chain. And this is where we have, I mentioned that yesterday in my speech at Westminster, but I spoke about de-risking. But it's exactly what is at stake. I don't want to decouple Europe and European perspective with the rest of the world. It doesn't make sense. But just, we should look very lucidly at the world, which is ours today. Are we sure that all the countries in this world will be super cooperative with us, and the day you have a breakthrough innovation, we'll say, okay, this is a global innovation, open science? No, I have no doubt. No doubt. Let's look at what will happen on the pharma companies in the days and weeks to come with our good US friends. Nobody 2 years ago would have imagined what is happening today on tariffs and trade. And if we are totally lucid, today we are too much dependent in terms of computing capacities. Too much. So clearly we have to work very hard. So we need to facilitate and clearly endorse the fact this is a global approach and this is a cross-border innovation trend. AI. But we have to de-risk ourselves on computing capacities, number one. We have to de-risk ourselves on chips, because we are too much dependent on some Taiwanese companies. And we have to build our own capacities on energy. I didn't mention that, but it's absolutely critical. We are good partners on energy with your country, and tomorrow in the summit we will revert on this critical issue. But if you don't produce on the long range low carbon, pilotable and competitive energy, you have no chance to be part of the race. Because having computing capacities in a data center is super demanding in terms of energy. And one of the big advantages we have in France is that in 2024, we exported 90 terawatt-hour, largely based on the historical nuclear program. So it's one of the key items, and at a European scale, we have clearly to follow up our strategy to produce much more low-carbon, pilotable electricity. And it's part of the game. And fourth is on talents. We are training a lot of talent. This is part of our advantages. We mentioned that, three of us. But let's be honest. A lot of our talents are attracted in other places. So it's very important to deploy the good policies in order to keep them with us, or create the good incentives to bring them back at home. And what's happening in the US as well regarding science, I think is a good momentum. I don't want to be cynical with that, because this is terrible for science, for climate, and so on. But offering, as Europeans, the perspective that there are more than those who want to work on climate, on AI and to work in an academic context where they are free, and we do believe in academic freedom and free research. I mean, this is a European perspective. And now it seems to be very attractive because it's challenged in other places. So here are some critical elements where, even if this is a global approach, we should not be too naive. And there is a little bit our model, and this is where we have to work together because we are exactly put in the same situation. And let me share with you a very politically incorrect issue post-Brexit in this country. But if I followed properly the narrative of the Brexit, the whole story was to say it will be much easier to fix our problems without the EU. I'm not sure you fixed migration and financial issues post-Brexit much better than with the EU. I'm sure about one thing. Having closer links is the best way to fix our critical issues on research, science, AI, and so on. Ready. And this is why I think I don't have the feeling that the US are embracing you, saying you are my best friend and I will give you super perspective. On pharma, not better than us. On trade, you negotiate your deal. We are working hard to try to negotiate it. But having 10% tariffs is good for nobody. So I do believe that even the grand large could be very attractive sometimes. I think close friends, just sharing the channel, and good old friends being predictable and respectful, I think sometimes it's good as well for innovation.
I was about to say that I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone in this room to say we're absolutely delighted to be reassociated with Horizon Europe on behalf of the research and innovation community. If I could perhaps end by going even more global, we've had the London AI Summit and we had the Paris AI Summit, and next year we'll all be in India for the Indian AI Impact Summit. If I could start with you, Arthur, and come down the line, it would be great to end with an understanding of what you want to see on the agenda and what you hope the outcomes of that summit are.
I think we need to start thinking about how AI is affecting democracies and how this technology, which brings a lot of benefits, can be used both ways when it comes to addressing citizens' needs. And so what we've started to do as a company is to really work with public services to put the technology into the hands of citizens. But there are also ways in which this technology can be used as an influence tool in a way that might be not transparent enough for the upcoming elections. And so I would like to see that being put on the agenda personally, because I think it's going to have effects on the upcoming elections. I think it's a risk that is accelerated by some form of concentration of power by a few American companies. And so we need to look into that, and we need to make sure that we have enough transparency there. It's one aspect. And then I would say, again, look at the benefits, look at specifically in India how that could be helpful. I'm thinking about this is a technology that can facilitate access to services, including healthcare services, including better employment, having a better connection to the state and a better acceptance of the state rules as well, can be really facilitated by AI, and we can dive into it more and have very precise proposals that are grounded into the science that we've done.
Thank you. And Demis?
Well, look, I think the first two, the Bletchley Park and the Paris summits were very successful, and I think very looking forward to the next India summit. This kind of international dialogue is critical, I think, for AI, and I think I agree with everything that the President said about it's great to see UK, France, and UK-EU cooperation rising. I think that's going to be incredibly important in many fields, but especially AI, to, these shared value systems we have, trying to balance the opportunities with the risks in a sensible way. We always talk about being bold with the opportunities in science and medicine. It's going to be incredible things in energy that AI is going to bring, and we have to embrace that economically and scientifically. But we've also got to deploy it in a responsible way for the benefit of the world. And I think the UK and France and convening those two summits and the next one have got a big part to play in that. So really looking forward to the next one.
Thank you. And Mr. President, if we could hear your views for the summit.
Look, I totally share what was just said. I think the first, the relevance of this summit was to have a global discussion. And I think it's very important not to divide this world between North and South and to have US on one side, China on the other side, and the rest of the world, I would say. And I think this series of global discussions, first, allow people to team up in a certain way, share the same views about opportunities, but as well the main concerns. This is as well a unique opportunity to have exchanges between researchers, academics, entrepreneurs, investors, and policymakers. And this is a relevant ecosystem at a global scale if we want clearly to guide, if it's possible to guide, but as well to accompany the AI innovations where we want, by the way. And to resynchronize our agenda, because we see some differences in different parts of the world between innovation, regulation, total absence of regulation, and so on. And it's important if we want precisely to be part of this race, but as well to have an AI at the service of humanity, to share this discussion and to be sure first that AI by design, in a certain way, goes in the right direction, and that the policymakers have the sufficient level of ownership and understanding of all these innovations, and to try to see together how to build the most efficient and ethical ecosystem. So having a unique discussions on so many topics, and the same discussion from India to Canada is for me very important. So this is why I'm very excited as my two friends with this perspective of this new summit in India. And I want to thank you, by the way, because you launched the first edition in UK, and it was very important. And this cooperation is absolutely critical between not just both of us, but globally speaking.
Well, thank you very much. And I think it's clear these conversations can and must continue. I would like you to thank our panel for what I hope you found was a fascinating discussion on the future of AI innovation, and I think as well that demonstrated just how important it is for policymakers and innovators to be talking to each other as we navigate what is really quite an exciting but also very challenging new technology. So if you put your hands together, please, to thank our panel. And if I could just ask everybody to remain in their seats just for a few minutes, and then we'll be allowing everyone to leave the venue. Thank you.